Hi, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Craft on Tap. We talk about growth marketing for RIAs. Today, we're going to talk about whether you should hire an agency for your marketing or whether you should build that and bring it in-house. So we've got some good stories to share. We've got some juicy stories, right? We've got some pros and cons to each of those options. And then to cap us off, we're going to talk about a hybrid approach where you have an agency and you also have an in-house person. So hopefully what we're going to do today is just share our thoughts, our experiences, so that you can pull from those and make a more informed decision for you and for your RIA business as you go through this process of figuring out, should I go agency or should I start to build a marketing team in-house? Or if you have either of those things existing already, should you stick with it or should you shift, into one or the other? So we're going to start there. Faustin, do you want to shed any light on our positive and negative experiences with this in the
Sure.
past
Yeah. Absolutely.
5 years or
Ab-
so? Yeah.
yeah. I definitely want to talk through them. But first, I think it's just important to recognize the bias that we have as an agency, right?
Right.
I mean, we definitely are more slanted towards, in a lot of circumstances, feeling like the agency is the better route. But that's not always the case, right, Stephen? Because I know we've talked even recently about some different people that you've been meeting with, where you ask. This is one of the things that you talk about right away. Is like, hey, why do you want to go away from the in-house route, or have you considered the in-house route? Because it is the right path for a lot of firms, right? Potentially.
Yeah, I actually good call. This question has come up twice this week and then once last week, where I talked about this with a prospect that and just asked them, like you said, why wouldn't you build this in house? Why wouldn't you hire a marketing person or multiple marketing people, or go down that path? Tell me why you wouldn't do that, because sometimes that is a more powerful question to ask ourselves than the other way around. So it's come up recently. I think. I'll start by saying, like, this may be selling against ourselves, and I don't think we care. I think we're here to be helpful to the right people who are listening to this. But there are definitely cases where you should hire a marketing person or multiple marketing people in house, and you should look to build that out. I think I told a guy this past week, this advisor who's smaller but growing quickly, really sharp, like has a lot of upside. And he said, I don't know. I said, why wouldn't you bring this in house? Why wouldn't you hire a marketing person or a couple marketing people instead of us? And he's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of debating. Maybe I should do that. And I said, if you have, I just told him straight up, if you have the ability or you have the wherewithal, you have the willpower to, to hire and then train and then manage and professionally develop a marketing person or multiple marketing people, you should do that. Like, I literally
Yeah.
think that as a business owner, why wouldn't you do that? Because, and we'll get into the pros and cons, but I think you should push that direction. We've had other like some of our current clients now, they said, they told us the main reason they hired us and didn't go in house was they said, we're not marketers. We don't know anything about marketing. I mean, they do, but they just don't live in it like we do. They said, we don't know anything about marketing. So how are we going to hire and train and manage and level up a marketing person or multiple marketing people, and we don't know a thing about it ourselves? Like, we don't, we're better off doing what we're really good at, which is running and growing the business, which is working with clients, this type of thing. So for them, that was the like our biggest value that we brought to the table as an agency. So I think, just starting off, if you have, like I said, if you have any thought that you can do this in-house and any of that appeals to you, I think you should exhaust that path first.
Yeah.
I think you should go down that path and at least start and put out the job ad, like get the job description together, get your timeline together, put the job ad out, and start fielding candidates and start going. Because we'll get into it. We'll get into the pros and cons of an in-house model. But long term, if you're going to build a firm, like this guy I talked with this week that I was telling you, right? He was smaller. I think he was maybe 250 million in AUM, somewhere in there. But he wants to get to a billion and a half within the next few years. So he's gonna do this, and then he's not slowing down after that. Like, he wants to keep growing and I'm like, again, if you have the chops to do this, if you have the willpower to do that, I think you should, because long term, then you're going to have a real marketing team that's a real asset to your business, as opposed to being reliant on an outsourced solution such as us. So there, I've
Yeah.
sold against myself, right?
Yeah.
That's literally that's what I tell people, and now we're sharing it on the podcast. So that's really what we think. If we're going to be like marketing fiduciaries for RIAs, that's what we say.
Yeah, and I would say too, like, why, right? Like, why do you tell people that? And like, one of the biggest pros that we talked about, and kind of prepping for this discussion is just the level of brand intimacy that you can have with a marketing person who's in-house. Like the closeness to every single person on the team. If you do have an office where they're going to work in that office, like the conversations, the relationships that can be built in person, you can take the marketing person can become so familiar with everyone in that office and everything that's happening and the overall long-term vision, and hear the fly on the wall conversations that are taking place on a day-to-day basis. I don't think that value can be undersold. I mean, there's just so much that's going on there, right? I would also say too, like, just from a like an event perspective or different things that are happening, the marketing person, if they're managing social, or if, I mean, they can just be utilized in so many different ways that an agency just can't replicate. We were working with a firm last year. We had a really successful partnership with them, and they actually decided to go and take it in-house, right? Versus continue to work with us on a monthly basis. And the reason was, like, the primary reason was, is just that they could have people to go to the events. They could have people to take the pictures and recognize the team members on a day-to-day basis. And they wanted someone that just understood and was like in all the Slack conversations, was in all the team meetings on a weekly basis. Just have somebody that just knew the firm from the inside out. And that was a huge pro, right? And I think that's like one of the main strengths, I think, of the in-house team, is that our agency can provide a really high level of responsiveness and making you feel like we're part of the team, but it's never going to be able to replicate someone that's like in person in all those team meetings on a day-to-day basis, and really able to match the overall vision of where your firm is going. Is
Right.
that a good way to say it, Stephen?
Really good. I think, we work really hard, and we've designed our service model to make you feel like we are there on a daily basis. And we have, like most of our clients, we're in a shared Slack channel or shared Microsoft Teams channel. We meet usually every week, sometimes every other week, for an hour. So there's a lot of touch points we have, but it still doesn't add up to, if you have a full-time person who's sitting there, dedicated to marketing 40 hours a week. In person's
Yeah.
even better. It's just a different level of being immersed in the company, and we have multiple clients, right? So it's that person, that marketing person, all they're focused on is your brand, supporting your advisors, supporting your client communications, etc. Going the firm you mentioned, Brooklyn FI, that we worked with last year. Awesome team. We had a great experience. Learned a lot from them. Helped them grow. Helped them continue to grow, I should say. And it was so great. But we weren't there in person either. And like the person that they hired, she's there. She's going to the company happy hours. She's going to the client appreciation events. She's like mixing and mingling there. She's taking pictures. She's sharing that out to their other. It's just things that you can't do remotely with an agency, that they're able to do. And it's, we're pumped for them. I think it's great. Like, I think to them,
Yeah.
like I said before, they were at that stage where they're like, we're ready to take it in house for all the reasons I said before. They have the chops, they have the HR, they have the professional development tracks, they have it. They're very good with people management. It's, they were ready for it for sure. So. Anyhow, that's a good example of being fully immersed in the brand for sure.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the cons of it, though, right? Which is why a lot of firms end up, looking past all the pros we just talked about and ended up partnering with us. And the big one, I think you touched on it a little bit, is just like managing someone in the marketing field is tough for most firms, right? Like even understanding how to provide them a level of coaching and management so that they can level up in their field, knowing the right professional development opportunities to provide them with paying for those professional development opportunities, knowing what tools to use, right, and how to equip that person with the right tools so that they can be successful in their job. I mean, those are some big ones, and then understanding like the quality that's out there that's available in the marketing world versus what their internal in-house person is doing, I think can be tough, right? I think most of the advisory firms that we work with are well versed in like what's happening in the space in the sense that they see posts and they see blog articles and they hear about things on the Kitsy's podcast, and so they have a good knowledge about what's happening. But in terms of like trends, cutting edge, edge trends, things like SEO evolving into GEO as ChatGPT like takes more search results from Google's AI overviews, how they've just cut off 100 search results pages and cut to one, and how that's affected GEO. All those things are, I think, very difficult for a firm that's focused on financial planning, wealth management, investment management. It's difficult for them to fully understand and equip the marketing person to be able to be successful in all those different capabilities. And so, perhaps you find a unicorn that can do all of that, which is, fantastic. But I think that's one of the main cons. I don't know. What do you think, Stephen?
This is why we have a little tagline on our website, the marketing unicorn you've been looking for, and why we have the little unicorn side logo, I guess I would call it, is just because finding a person that can wear all those hats, that can constantly like stay updated on all the things all the trends, all the movement in the space. There's just a lot to keep up on. Similar to, I think to professional development in the financial advisory world, there's so much to learn. There's so much to keep up on. You constantly, the best ones are constantly growing and developing their expertise. And, you can have a person do that. It's just, you have to be proactive and diligent about enabling them, and then making sure you have the right person that wants to learn, that learns that way, that can keep up across all the channels and so on. It's just it becomes a lot. It can become a lot. So, like you said, a unicorn. The advisor I just talked to earlier this week, he said, "Well, I'm gonna try to build it in house, like you said. If you come across any good candidates, though, like it'd be great if you could send them my way." And I said, "What are you? I don't know what you're talking about. If I come across good candidates, we're gonna hire them. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Good luck, So they come to me first, and then if they're not a fit for us, I guess. But if they're that good at marketing and they're gonna be a good fit, we're gonna hire them first, anyways. Okay. Another potential con, potentially higher upfront costs. So we are an agency, like we're 1099. We are, the way we structure our contracts is month over month. We don't have long-term agreements. With an employee, you will be looking at salary, benefits, equipment, and then we mentioned the training, investing in their training. Maybe you send them to different marketing conferences. Maybe they're enrolled in different online training programs. We've got all kinds of stuff we do internally to kind of like share our knowledge that we've been acquiring, and that is a constant moving thing. So somehow you've got to pay for that. And fully loaded employee, you gotta watch out for those costs. So scalability, I think one of the biggest downsides or look the other way, one of the biggest upsides to hiring an agency would be variability, right? You can scale us up or down if you need to. So again, we go month to month. We have a flat fee that we work on for our clients. If it's not working, if something happens, if whatever the case may be, you're able to scale that up or down really quickly. With an employee, that would be a little bit more difficult, right? Depending on the state you're in, or depending on the type of business you're running, we're looking at like performance improvement plans, and you have fluctuating project demands. You might need somebody else with a different skill set to come in than what you currently have, and then you've got to figure that out as you go. Whereas with an agency, you have all these built-in different skill sets that you can push and pull that you can pull from, right? So the scalability of it would be the last potential con if you go with the in-house model. Okay,
Yeah, nice.
anything to
I
add
like
there,
that.
Faustin? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say one thing that we didn't have on the list, but just something you and I talked about. It almost feels a little bit. It's a little bit riskier for an in-house person. Like you make somebody a W-2 employee, it's just if things don't necessarily work out, or if you're struggling a little bit, or if you decide you're going to go a different direction in 3 to 6 months or a year, it just becomes a little bit harder to cut ties, right, with a W-2 employee
Yeah, the
versus a
cost of a
vendor
bad
or an
hire.
agency. Yeah.
Yeah. The long term, the cost of a bad hire. It's honestly, it'd be a lot of your time. That's probably the most valuable piece. A lot of
Yeah.
your time in dealing with it. And then, yeah, if it's not a good fit after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, it might take a while to kind of offboard or off ramp that person. So, yeah, I think it's risky. This is funny because I've had, we're like entrepreneurial type of people, right? I've had people tell me like, oh, it's like it's so risky, like kind of like starting your own business, doing what you're doing. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's also risky to have a job. At any point, the employer could say, okay, we're doing a round of layoffs and you're done. So I look at risk, I think, a little bit differently than some people do. And you might, everybody here listening looks at risk in their own way, but could be risky to bring it in house. Yeah, for the reasons you were mentioning.
Okay, let's
Okay,
talk
should we
about.
shift into should we
Yeah, I
shift
mean,
into
we've
just
touched.
pitching ourselves? Yeah, should we just talk
Yeah,
about
we've
ourselves
touched.
for a little while?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit. We've talked a little bit about this just in contrast to the cons of an in-house person. But okay, so pros. I just think you get like a level of strategy and expertise by hiring an agency that I don't think is necessarily achievable with one person unless you do find that unicorn, right? And what I mean by that is just like someone staying up to date and the different specializations in marketing across the field, everything from SEO to design to website development, right? Like that, you get access to all of those things in an agency or a full service agency like ours, right? That's going to become your entire outsourced CMO. And I would say even more than that, right? Than like a typical agency is an agency like ours that specializes in working with financial advisors. It specializes in this independent RIA practice space. We're able to not just have the expertise in marketing, but also see expertise in the field itself, right? And to be able to knowledge share across different clients, what's working, what's not, similarities and differences between firms in terms of who they're targeting and what's working and what's not. And I just think that's hard to replicate, right? Like the amount, we have a big collaborative team I guess we're not that big, right? But we have a team of experts that we're able to share and knowledge share, and that's harder to replicate in an in-house type situation where you're kind of solo and you have to go out and like branch out and make your own connections and share expertise. It just takes a whole nother level of, work to be able to do that, and even knowing where to start, I think, is a potential con. So that would be the big thing, like just overall strategic direction that we can provide, the expertise across so many of the different marketing areas, and then the expertise in the space itself. I think those are things that's why you would partner with an agency like ours, the big pros. What did I miss?
Yeah, we've got we've got data, we have client examples, we have multiple people working on multiple clients. So we know, if somebody asks me a question about paid ads, for example, I can tell them what we've tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked across Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Google, across sizes of RIAs, across target personas, etc. And it's just right, we have that perspective, and that goes for social media and video marketing and webinars and SEO and AEO and all these other things. So I think that's a big one, the expertise, not just that we're sharing the expertise, but we're sharing it all within the RIA space, amongst each other. So that's a big one. It's almost like what you would need for that if you have an in-house person. They would need to join like a mastermind group with other marketing people from other RIAs, and they'd meet, weekly and share best practices, examples, templates, like all that kind of stuff, and that would be the equivalent if you were doing this in house, something like that. If you had a mastermind of marketing people kind of from all different RIA teams coming together.
Nice.
Okay, so
I'd also
how
say
about
just like I would also say too, like just not having to manage us in the same way that you would have to think about managing an employee, right? Like everything kind of gets queued up for you, handed to you. You get the final approval. The agendas are created for you. We do our own professional development. We take your suggestions. We're not, there's a lot from the managerial side that takes time off of or puts time back on your agenda or on your calendar, and we take a lot of the mental
here we
potential
go.
burden of having an employee, right? Away from
You can say mental load.
yeah, the mental load. Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
100% mental load. So, we take off a little bit of that mental load, which is what you would want in an in-house employee too, right? But just depending on the level they're at and the stage of their career, that could be a key component and, a pro of hiring an agency.
Yeah, that's probably maybe the second reason that people hire us is they want somebody to drive the bus. They don't want to have to think about this. They don't want to have to be in charge of setting the KPIs, in charge of managing the execution, in charge of coming up with the ideas and then vetting them and then coming up with the plan and executing that plan and then going back and analyzing it. I mean, it just takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of mental load. We gotta build that phrase into our episode at some point. And that's probably the second maybe top two reasons that people hire us is they're ready for somebody to take the reins and align a marketing program to their business goals, and we can do that. So yes, it's probably a really big one there. Okay, what else?
Okay. What about some of the cons?
Okay, cons of an agency model. Yeah. So potentially higher cost. You're paying for all the things we just said. A premium service. In our case, we're really confident. We have a lot of great results. We are deeply embedded in your business as a outsourced CMO and digital marketing team, but we charge more. We're more expensive than an in-house person, depending on the person, right? So, I think for us, our typical retainer would be anywhere from 10 to 15,000 a month. So that's 120 to 180,000 a year. 120 to 180,000 a year. You can get a really good marketing person for 120,000 a year, fully loaded. You could pay them 100 and then benefits and all the other costs, maybe 120, and then maybe you could get a lower level marketing person that's responsible for more of the execution. They're more specialized, like they're the copywriter, graphic designer, whatever that might be. So, cost wise, we could definitely be seen as more expensive for, kind of like looking at just the line item for cost, because we're charging for that premium service, and we are proven, and at least in our eyes, we're proven, and so cost could be you could generate some cost savings there if you find the right people. They could definitely be cheaper than what you pay an agency for.
Nice. And I'd say like the other potential con I would say is just in-house person can operate with a lot more speed, I guess I would say. We're pretty quick and responsive. Like we can turn things around. I know we've shared this a couple of times, but a big market event happens and we're pretty good about getting in front of things really quickly. But it's not going to be as fast as somebody, right? That like somebody comes into your office, right? An advisor comes to your office, say, "Hey, I just got a call about this. What happened in the markets? I'd like to get a post up right now about this, right?" And like by noon, there's a post that's up because that person's dedicated to marketing all day for that firm. It doesn't quite happen that quickly, so there's a little bit of a delay, I guess I would say. I don't want to undersell how quick we are actually. Like I was reading just in preparation for this episode about how some agencies are pretty slow and like there's nothing, like we're definitely not that. Like we can be really responsive, but in comparison to someone who can do something in the next hour, right? We're more
Yeah.
like, hey, we can do things by the end of the day or within the next 24 hours, right? If there's an urgent
Right.
request. But we're not going to be able to put something out within like an hour, every time, right? And be
Right.
able to deliver that. So,
Yeah, if you get
yeah.
the wrong agency, this is why Tracy and I, my wife and I, started our agency. I mean, one of the reasons was we had experiences with other agencies that you would send a request, you'd send an email and ask them to update something on the website, for example, and then you would wait for like 48 to 72 hours, and then you get a reply that says, like, okay, got it. Yeah, thanks. We will review internally and get back to you. And it's like, what the hell? What is going on here? So that's super frustrating. And it's, then you get charged for that hour, and it's like, okay, you get charged for the back and forth email. It's just annoying and a terrible experience. So I think there are those agencies still out there, but for us, we definitely try to be more responsive. But I think that's a good way you put it. You could get things done internally within an hour or less than an hour, versus us, you're going to be waiting, till the end of the day, if it's super urgent, but by that end of the day, or within 24 hours, for something that's more urgent. So anyhow, yeah, that's a potential con there.
Okay. Okay. So I think we've talked. I think we've talked about agencies, pros and cons, in-house pros and cons. What about the hybrid model, Stephen? What does that even look like to start with?
Okay, this has come up multiple times in the past week as well. So the hybrid model would be you already have an in-house person, somebody who's established, somebody who's proven, somebody who's already provided a lot of value to your company, to your brand, and they need to stay there. And then but they're also looking for something else. They could be looking for more help with execution. They could be looking for more help with strategic guidance, like being a good strategic partner. Whatever the case may be, they're looking for help, and they're looking to go outside for that. So that would be a hybrid approach. A few things we want to mention here. We've seen this work out really positively, and we've seen this work out negatively, right? Where eventually we need to go our separate ways, either with the agency or with the in-house person. But some best practices here, I guess what we'd say. I think the things that we really need to make this work successfully would be, just like anything else, having very clearly defined roles and responsibilities before the agreement starts or before the engagement starts. So, I just said to this person earlier this week. So, what ideally in your world, like, what are you doing, and then what are we doing? Like, what are the lanes? Like, just help me define them. I'm ready to define them with you if you need help, but you have something in mind. So let's talk about it and then get it down on paper, and then that way we kind of know like what our lane is and what your lane is. Not that we can't hold hands and walk through different things together, and we obviously are going to collaborate, but for the sake of everybody involved, having clearly defined roles and responsibilities is super, super important. Maybe going along with that would be a hierarchy. We've seen it work really well where we are driving the bus. We're in charge. We're driving the strategy. We're making the bigger decisions related to marketing, and that's worked well. And then we've also had the opposite where somebody in house is driving the bus. They know their company, they know their brand, they know what they want to do. They just need help executing, and we can take orders too. But either one of those works as long as you have that figured out ahead of time. It's really key. If you don't, it leads to just chaos and frustration, and
Yeah.
hopefully eventually it leads to a candid conversation where you can rectify it. We've had that before as well. But sometimes it leads to like, okay, this isn't working, so we got to try something else. Let's go our separate ways. So there's a few things there. I think just having those defined roles would be really helpful if you want to kind of get the most out of the strengths that each of those parties bring to the table.
Yeah, I think you said that really well. I think just a clear distinction of roles, like the two lanes analogy, I think is a really good one here because if we can get clarity on who's driving, like to your point, we're more than willing to take. I don't want to say take orders, but we can do the execution, right? We can ride on the bus that you're driving. I think where we've had trouble before is when there's a lack of clarity about who's in the driver's seat, right? And we're both trying to, we're
Hmm.
doing too much crossover on the exact same roles. And there can be potentially some friction. And it's like, who's owning this deliverable? Who owned the final outcome of that deliverable? Was it craft or was it the in-house person? And I think the more that can be decided up front with clear direction from the firm, whoever our
Hmm.
champion is, I think that ends up working out into a really positive relationship, right, Steven?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, you said that pretty well. I'll just say not to pitch Craft Impact, but we talked before about the marketing unicorn you've been looking for, and so we've actually made some hats with our unicorn. So if anybody wants a hat that's listening to this, send me an email, steven@craftimpact.com. I will ship you a hat. Provided that you take a selfie and post it on LinkedIn with me, or at least send it to me and I can post it. But yeah, hopefully this didn't come off as a strong pitch, that you have to use an agency or that you have to use craft. Hopefully it came off as there's pros and cons to either solution. What we've seen, hopefully is helpful to you in your decision making process. But we'd love to hear if you have other questions that we didn't address with this. If you've had other experiences that you think would be helpful that we take into account, I would love to hear those. So you can send us a note on our website or email me, steven@craftimpact.com. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Anything else to add, Faustin, before we wrap up?
No, just
Okay, great.
would love to see would love to see some of our listeners, our avid listeners, with some of those unicorn hats. We'd be pretty
That's
excited to
right.
see those. So
We'll get the unicorn army out there. Yeah, thanks for listening. Please give us a good rating, whatever the channel is that you're listening on, and subscribe so you can get notified the next time an episode is available. And thanks again for listening to us talk about agency versus in-house. Have a great week.